In 1968, on March 29th through the 31st, the followers of the Malcolm X Society led over 500 new African, Black activists to Detroit, Michigan, to discuss the future of our struggle. At this meeting, the Provisional Government of the Republic of New Africa was formed, and a strategy for winning independence was created. They issued a Declaration of Independence, formed a provisional government, adopted a constitution, and identified and designated the 5 states of Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and South Carolina as the new African nation's national territory. For their efforts, they were viciously attacked. Today, the struggle continues. Despite all the negative press about our community, we have people developing our own schools, growing our own food, and building our own institutions. It's time to stop complaining about the problem and start getting involved with the solution. Welcome to the journey to independence. Some people believe the idea of independence is too big. It's too hard. It's unobtainable. But when you think about it, we've already done it. Before slavery, our people created some of the greatest nations the world has ever known. But we don't have to go back that far. After slavery, our people created independent Black townships and communities all over America.
Even as Lee surrendered to Grant, scores of newly emancipated men and women were arriving at St. Catharines in the Sea Islands of Georgia. Under Sherman's Field Order 15, these abandoned lands would be theirs. Leading them was 53-year-old Tunis G. Campbell from New Jersey. For years, Campbell had worked tirelessly as an abolitionist, a preacher, an educator, and political organizer. With the help of Secretary of War Stanton, Campbell got himself appointed superintendent for the Union-occupied islands in Georgia.
There are a lot of people in 1865 who were trying to tell blacks what freedom is and tell them what they ought to be doing. Campbell reflects the impulse we should really determine ourselves what we're doing. Independence from white control, that's critical to their definition of what freedom is. It just happens that on St. Catharines Island, you can create such a thing. The whites have all fled, Sherman has given out land, so the opportunity to create an independent Black community exists.
We left with rations and a few families, and at Hilton Head got more, Campbell wrote. And Savannah loaded us as deep as we could swim. These deserted lands had been at the heart of the South's rice-growing empire.
As Campbell arrived to the island and they put the gangplank down, the island was overgrown. It's been looted by Union naval forces. The seagrass is high. There are rattlesnakes. There are alligators. He can see the slave cabins. They're also in great disrepair. Immediately upon arriving and assessing the situation there, he writes to the American Missionary Association, asking for seed, asking for plows, sweet potatoes to supplement the diet, marriage licenses for the people. And he calls a meeting of the people to explain to them, this is our home. Beginning next week, I will divide up the land into 40 acres for each of you.
By June, the settlers had crops in the ground. I have corn, watermelons, citron, onions, radishes, and squash, wrote Campbell. But the rebels have destroyed the sweet potatoes. Do not fail to send them. Send 8 number 11 plows, 6 cultivators. Get the improved ones.
Tunis Campbell sees the South as a kind of new political frontier. Sees himself as a kind of political pioneer to go to that place where this new regime of black political liberty and civil liberty might flourish.
Campbell arrived at St. Catherine's with his own blueprint for a government. There would be a Congress with 8 men in the Senate and 20 in the House of Representatives, a Supreme Court, and Campbell himself as president. He even established a 275-man militia. Order, said Campbell, is heaven's first law.
So you've got this tiny little island, 12 miles long, 3 miles wide, and a government set up to resemble the United States government with a Supreme Court at the top. It's wonderful, beautiful experiment in democracy, and people took to it very well. They liked the idea of having the power to select their leaders and remove them.
But at St. Catherine's, no one was going to remove Tunis Campbell. On St. Catherine's Island, Tunis Campbell's township was flourishing. 369 settlers occupied 54 slave dwellings left from the old days. They grew fruits and vegetables of all kinds. But what they wanted were schools. There is one sin that slavery committed against me that I will never forgive, remembered one man. It robbed me of my education.
Before the Civil War, maybe no more than 10 to 15% of the black population of the South was literate. To learn how to read was a revolutionary act. They understood that it was necessary if they were to take their place as freed people within the Union, that they have the rudiments of education to survive.
After the war, freedmen who had secretly educated themselves quickly opened schools in warehouses, on barges, even in old slave markets. And the Freedmen's Bureau and Northern Missionaries built thousands more throughout the South. At St. Catherine's, Campbell used his own savings to bring teachers down from the North. Then he called on his wife, Harriet, in New York.
He writes a letter to Harriet, says, bring the sons down. We're going to establish the schools. We're on an island of our own. There are no white people here, and we're going to lift up children. Bring all the primers you have, and please join us. This is the first time he's seen his wife and sons in about 2 years.
Harriet and Tunis taught side by side with Northern teachers. Campbell reported that 80 children and adults on St. Catherine's and 60 on nearby Sapelo Island were enrolled in schools. More than 1,000 students attended Campbell's makeshift academies.
The adults are being taught at night. They need to deal with white people more as equals. And to do that, they have to be literate.
White planters watching from the mainland resented the schools and the entire settlement. Not just because the land had been seized from one of their own, but because of Campbell's ambition and independence.
People like Campbell were viewed as black people out of their place. He can think for himself in ways that whites find hard to believe that a black person could think. This means, then, that history has somehow spun out of control.
By June 1865, Jacob Waldberg, the white planter who had owned St. Catharines, was back in Georgia. He demanded that Campbell get off his land.
The planters are holding up deeds to the islands that are 200 years old or 150 years old. They said, no, wait a minute. This is a nation of laws, and see, my great-granddaddy had this deed. And yours comes from a possessory title given to you in time of war for abandoned lands. How does that affect my promise of property rights under the Constitution of the United States?
Waldberg got his answer. St. Catharines Congress passed a law forbidding any white person from setting foot on the island. Campbell's militia stood ready to enforce it.
Although Campbell defended himself, the white power structure was eventually able to take his land by force.
Just how wealthy was Black Wall Street? Well, today we're going to find out.
The stories of Greenwood's prosperity became legend in the black community, and in fact, in the whole world. The creation of the powerful black community known as Black Wall Street was intentional. In 1906, O.W. Gurley, a wealthy African-American from Arkansas, moved to Tulsa and purchased over 40 acres of land that he made sure was only sold to other African-Americans. The young entrepreneur had just resigned from a presidential appointment under President Grover Cleveland in order to strike out on his own. Mr. Gurley became a multi-millionaire, and he was the owner of several businesses, including his prized possession, which was a hotel. He also provided an opportunity for those who migrated from the harsh oppression of Mississippi.
Another important visionary who contributed to the success of Black Wall Street was Mr. J.B. Stratford. J.B. Stratford had graduated from Indiana University with a law degree and had moved to Greenwood to purchase various land vacancies in the area. After buying these vacant spaces, he would then sell them to African-American residents for redevelopment so that these empty spaces could be transformed into residential houses and profitable businesses. By 1921, Mr. Stratford had been considered one of the wealthiest in the country, as he owned numerous properties in Greenwood and even had his hotel named after him, the Stratford Hotel.
O.W. was a subscriber to the philosophies of Booker T. Washington, while J.B. was a follower of the more radical W.E.B. Du Bois.
Nonetheless, their differences aside, the two men began to develop an all-black district in the unincorporated stretch of land north of Tulsa's train station. O.W. and J.B. both became rich as the oil industry boomed in Tulsa and hundreds of African Americans immigrated to Greenwood.
The 40 acres that were purchased resulted in a thriving community that populated a 35 square block district.
There were over 600 businesses, and on Black Wall Street were attorneys, real estate agents, dentists, pilots, architects, musicians and singers, entrepreneurs, doctors, pharmacists, dry cleaners, plumbers, barbers, hairdressers, professors and teachers, nurses, bankers, newspaper editors, among many other professions who offered their services in the neighborhood.
A dollar circulated 36 to 100 times, and it remained in the Greenwood district almost a year before leaving. To this day, no other community has been able to duplicate that type of circulation. There are communities today, however, where the dollar stays in about 30 days and 45 days, but no other community, as has been said, has ever been able to match that type of circulation.
Although it wasn't the only one, there were prominent black business districts in Durham, North Carolina, Richmond, Virginia, and Rosewood, Florida. The people of Greenwood achieved a level of black economic success and self-determination that had never existed before in the United States. Less than 60 years removed from slavery, to put that in perspective.
Despite racial discrimination and Jim Crow segregation, the Greenwood district offered proof that black entrepreneurs were capable of creating abundant wealth.
When left alone, our ancestors thrived. And one such example is this. In the entire state of Oklahoma, there were only 2 airports. Yet 6 black families owned their own private planes in the District of Black Wall Street. Wow, imagine that.
Folks, think about that for a second. There were 2 airports in the entire state of Oklahoma, yet 6 families own private planes. What an accomplishment. Many of the homes had indoor plumbing before those in the white areas did.
Booker T. Washington actually coined it Negro Wall Street.
It was also known at that time as Little Africa.
What made Black Wall Street truly special was that it was a place an ordinary person can go, such as a sharecropper, and have a respectable life, find decent paying work, and hope for a better life for his or her children. With oil men relocating to Tulsa, the resulting high demand for domestics enabled blacks to attain unheard of wages. Maids earned $20 to $25 a week, chauffeurs earned $15, gardeners earned $20, janitors, shoe shiners, and porters earned around $10. Domestics made up almost 2/3 of Greenwood's population, the remainder being professionals and business owners, whom the maids and chauffeurs hoped their children could imitate one day. As you can see, Black Wall Street was very well-rounded.
Keep in mind, the domestics spoken of were actually blacks working for other blacks. The average income of black families in the area exceeded what the minimum wage is today. These were people who were actually living in the lap of luxury.
Black Wall Street was its own city. It was a booming self-contained community, and many of the residents lived in luxury. Greenwood Avenue had been lined with hotels, restaurants, furriers, and even an early taxi service using a Ford Model T. For that time, that would be like driving a modern-day Bentley.
This is actually a picture of the Stratford Hotel, owned by Mr. J.B. Stratford. And he is a great example of excellence and abundance in the early 1900s. As stated earlier, he was a multi-millionaire. In addition to Mr. Stratford and Mr. Gurley, the district's most successful entrepreneurs reinvested in the community, building parks, schools, churches, theaters, banks, and they had access to many luxuries that whites in the same city did not. As a matter of fact, white people routinely borrowed money from black banks, and this was even done during the Great Depression. Here's a picture of bank owners and employees taking a picture in front of one of the black-owned banks. Here's the picture of one of the theaters that lined the Greenwood district. During that time, while showing the silent movies, they would have a live piano player playing alongside the movie, which was the custom of the day. So you see, Black Wall Street had all of the modern-day conveniences and luxuries. They were a community that really wanted for nothing. The schools were superior to those of the white areas. When the average student went to school on Black Wall Street, he wore a suit and tie because of the morals and respect they were taught at a young age. Black Wall Street contained a business college. As a matter of fact, the children of Greenwood's professionals attended Columbia Law School, Oberlin College, Hampton University, the Tuskegee Institute, Spelman College, and Atlanta University. Black Wall Street was a dream in progress and a symbol of black success. Just how wealthy was Black Wall Street? The truth is, we'll really never know. But based on the facts, we can confidently say that today's worth will be well into the billions. And just think, that was a self-contained community that was just developing. There is no telling where it would be today.
We generally call it the catastrophe because we feel like it wasn't a riot. We were not the perpetrators, we were the victims. But it took 80 years to get the state of Oklahoma to acknowledge that.
The Tulsa Race Massacre is believed to be one of the worst incidents of racial violence in American history. From May 31st to June 1st in 1921, as many as 300 people were killed, hundreds were injured, and thousands of buildings were destroyed.
On June 1st, they began to systematically destroy neighborhoods, and they had airplanes dropping things down on people's houses, and they had made up their minds to clear the entire area of black people.
It started after a newspaper reported a black man tried to sexually assault a white woman. Though it's still uncertain what exactly happened, many did not believe that story. The Oklahoma Historical Society said the most common explanation is Dick Rowland stepped on Sarah Page's foot when he entered the elevator, causing her to scream. A group of armed black men went to the courthouse to offer help protecting Rowland once they heard talks of lynching. A crowd of white men was also on the scene. A shot was fired and the riots began.
My parents were very distressed because here they are with 5 kids, and the schools had been. I went to Dunbar School, and that was reduced to just rubble. I mean, they blew it up.
Crowds of white rioters went to the Greenwood district, known as Black Wall Street. It was home to an affluent African-American community with banks, hotels, theaters, and new homes.
They took my 8-year-old brother too, where they were holding all the black men. And we didn't know, because we lived on one side of town and they lived on the other. We thought they were locking up the non-blacks too. But it so happened that it didn't occur that way. What they did was to disarm and lock up all black men. And then they said to the mob, there's nothing out there now but women and children, so you can do whatever you want to do. And that was when the real terrible things started to happen.
It ended when the city was placed under martial law and National Guard troops were deployed. But Black Wall Street was devastated. Survivors never received compensation for what they lost.
There are many examples of African people thriving in their own independent communities. Such towns include Kinloch, Missouri, Quakertown, Texas, Hobson City, Alabama, and Princeville, North Carolina, just to name a few. Although our independence communities were all attacked on some level, many even destroyed, they still serve as a shining example of what we can do when we collectively work together and do for self.
We want to begin with breaking news, a deadly shooting spree in Memphis, Tennessee.
I looked and I seen that my grandbaby was laying there with a bullet hole in his head.
Everyone in the home heard the sound of gunfire.
Based on the conditions of some of our communities today, it can be hard to believe that we once had many thriving independent towns. Every night on the news, we hear about the violence, the crime, the poverty, and all the self-destruction haunting our community. It can create a sense of hopelessness within our people. But if we take a closer look, we'll see that these conditions are not only predictable, but also intentional.
It's not surprising that many of our communities are in the conditions that they are in. In fact, it really can be expected when you take into account the fact that we lived under a system that considered us to be less than human beings, actually just property in which could be sold, killed, murdered, raped, brutalized at any time with no consequences. Even in their constitution, we were defined as only 3/5 of a human being for voting purposes. Add on top of that 100 years of lynchings where we were brutally murdered, burned alive, castrated, decapitated, and all type of horrifying acts committed against us, and no one ever paid for that. But if you combine the fact that there is a tradition of redlining where they pushed our people into areas that lack the very resources needed to survive, creating so-called ghettos, and then take into account the purposely flooding our communities with crack cocaine, turning our neighborhoods into war zones, and turning black kings and black queens into crack fiends, and then add on top of that racist laws passed that specifically targeted our community, causing the explosion in the prison population, in the mass incarceration in the school to prison pipeline. And you combine that with police brutality, and you combine that with the miseducation. You getting the picture? Because really, we can go on like this all day. But the point is, when you take in consideration the fact that we have endured an over 400-year genocidal program, it's not surprising that many of our communities are in the conditions that they are in. What is surprising is that despite all of this, we are still here.
All of the crime, violence, and poverty that torment our community can be frustrating, especially if we buy into the narrative pushed by the mainstream media. But we know the solution. We've already done it. Whenever we have gained a level of independence, we have thrived. The key is independence. Having the ability to control our lives. Being able to create institutions that support our people instead of exploiting them. There are many people today who are working toward the solution, but we need your help. It's time to stop talking about the problem and start participating in the solution. Join the movement. For more information, visit us at pg-rna.com, or you can donate at $PGRNA. Together, we can build a nation and build a better world. Free the land.
Free the land, comrades. This is your co-minister of youth, Zasada Shakur, and we are here at New African Nation Day 2022 in Birmingham, Alabama for the Provisional Government Republic of New Africa. And it's happening right here at our very own Crescent Cultural Community Center.
It's all on me.
I am President Samaat of the Provisional Government of the Republic of New Africa.
Our goal is land, independence, self-determination, and reparations.
Nation Day is extremely important because it commemorates the founding of our nation, and it gives, which was on March 31st, 1968, and it gives all conscious new Africans the opportunity to come together, to commune, to talk about different things, set particular goals and objectives, and that is going to assist in reaching our ultimate goal of land, independence, self-determination, and reparations.
Particularly in the United States, the African independence movement began, you can take it all the way back to 1619 with the Jamestown colony, where we were brought as enslaved population to Jamestown. Before then, if you take it back to St. Augustine, Florida in 1565, where we were also enslaved populations, when you had those people coming into these shores, even before they came into these shores, when they were throwing themselves off the boats, when they were fighting on the continent of Africa, and when they got here and they fought and they tried to escape, that's where the history began.
We've been fighting from the very beginning. It's not limited to what is happening on this continent, right? When we resisted the kidnap, rape, torture, and of our people, we were fighting against, colonization.
And ultimately, over time, we know we have concepts of marionage, we have concepts of enslaved rebellions, such as the one that took place in Haiti, and the one that took place in Louisiana in 1811, where they tried to form their own nation state. That's really the history of the New African Independence Movement.
In 1968, there's what they call a black government conference that was held in Detroit, Michigan. At that conference, the idea was to form a government that would be representative of African values, African justice, and African self-determination.
Initially, initially was a letter put out that was dated March 15, 1968. A letter put out by the Malcolm X Society. The Malcolm X Society was headed by people like Guy Abdel and Mari Abdel. And the Malcolm X Society put a letter out dated March 5, 1968. And a letter was put out to all the different people in different organizations, nationalities, different national spirit concept in regard to building their own independent black government.
Now, of course, the calling of that conference was as a result of revolutionary actions that had been taken prior to the conference. I mean, you can't just call a conference and expect revolutionaries to come if the revolutionaries don't already exist. So in 1968, over 500 delegates of different revolutionary formations came to Detroit for the Black Government Conference.
And during the Black Government Convention, on the 31st, they signed the first document, they signed the Independence Declaration of Independence, Queen Mother being the first signer, probably would have been the second founder with over 200 founders, and they declared the 5 states as our national territory known as New Africa.
That's really the history of the New African Independence Movement. It just wasn't given a proper name until 1968 on March 31st, when Amari Obadeli and Queen Mother Moore and different civil rights groups came together and decided that they no longer wanted to be a part of the American colonial capitalist project. So we take it all the way back to them. And those are the ancestors, and we stand on their shoulders.
I fight for land, independence, and for reparation. We gotta do for self-determination. I'm just dropping seeds, got to see some germination. You can keep the fame, see I want a nation.
All of the crime, violence, and poverty that torment our community can be frustrating, especially if we buy into the narrative pushed by the mainstream media. But we know the solution. We've already done it. Whenever we have gained a level of independence, we have thrived. The key is independence. Having the ability to control our lives. Being able to create institutions that support our people instead of exploiting them. There are many people today who are working towards a solution, but we need your help. It's time to stop talking about the problem and start participating in the solution. Join the movement. For more information, visit us at pg-rna.com, or you can donate at $PGRNA. Together, we can build a nation and build a better world. Free the land.
All right, free land. My name is Brother Hondo, Chicago. I'm from Chicago, and I'm here with the Rebuild Collective. We have a newspaper called Rebuild, which we're trying to have on national distribution throughout the territory and the empire. We feel it's important to celebrate New African Nation Day because this is our 55th anniversary where we finally took it upon ourselves to name ourselves, develop a code of conduct which we call New African Creed, and a Declaration of Independence to establish that the Black nation is indeed a New African nation, one of the many New African nations that was kind of come out of the enslavement of people and bring them to the Western Hemisphere. So all that to say is that the Black nation in the United States, it's important for us to declare ourselves as a free people that needs to have independence, because this is one of the ways we're going to solve a lot of the problems we have in the New African community. We need to control our own education, our own politics, our own economy, and develop a system where we can free all our people and get away from the miseducation that has brought us to this point here in the United States. In 2023, many of us are still in the muck, in the mire, and struggling. So that's why we say free the land by any means necessary.
In 1968, 500 delegates met in Detroit, Michigan to create an independent black government. There they signed a Declaration of Independence, elected a provisional government, and declared 5 southern states the territory of the Republic of New Africa.
At that conference, there were different perspectives on where the national territory should be for the provisional government of the Republic of New Africa. One proposal was to have 13 states, the southern states, all 13 of the southern states. Another was for 7 of the Confederate states. And then the compromise decision came out to be the 5 states that we call the national territories. And those 5 states are Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and South Carolina. Those are the 5 states that are identified as the national territory for the provisional government of the Republic of New Africa.
Different organizations already had this idea, like I mentioned, the Communist Party. You can also talk about the Nation of Islam. The Nation of Islam under Malcolm X and Elijah Muhammad spoke a lot about this. They didn't necessarily designate the 5 states in the South, but they were talking about getting land in the South and forming a separate nation. So as Malcolm X is the father of the New African Independence Movement, it just makes sense that we embrace that idea of nationalism.
How do you intend to gain possession of this land that you want, and how do you intend to get there?
That's a good question. The contribution that the black man made in this country, which amounts to 310 years of slave labor, for which we have never been given a dime or a cent, places a burden upon the American white man today, for which the government should pay. Since we cannot live in peace together, mixed up on this continent, the alternative to that solution is to divide a separate part of this country into which our people can migrate, and in which the government, again, should supply us with the machinery and the tools necessary to establish our own independent society and our own independent country. And in this way, it will be creating a solution that the black man himself, our people, ourselves, can bring about if we have that capability. And for your clarification, because this has been brought up, some people say, well, why should the government do this? If this government can send billions of dollars to communist countries like Poland and Yugoslavia, and to neutralist countries in Asia and Africa who have never made any contribution whatsoever to the sum net worth of this economy and country, and at the same time, this government feels that it is too much to set about something real to solve the problem for the slaves who made a greater contribution even than your people did, why the government doesn't even deserve to continue to function as a government.
What land is available that's not already possessed by others?
When you came to this country, the land was inhabited by the Indians, and you didn't have any problem then.
It's based on the Malcolm X doctrine when we say all the land in America that we have worked upon, has worked and lived upon, worked and built upon, and has been enslaved on, is land that belongs to us as a people.
And these 5 states are rich in resources. They're also the main states in which our people came to during the transatlantic slave trade, in which the new African nation was being built upon from 1619 all the way up to 1865, which is the foundation of our people. And the reason we want these 5 states because we helped build this up with blood, sweat, and tears, and they're also rich in resources, and they're also a part of our reparation. The states is our reparation aspect, because that's entitled to us due to the thing we want to suffer during the transatlantic slave trade, the Sub-Saharan slave trade, and American Negro slavery, which we experienced in America, which is known in the empire.
And we know that when we were brought to these shores, we were brought to these southern states. So we have claim over these southern states.
The idea that black people are owed land in America is not new. Near the end of the Civil War, General William T. Sherman met with 20 black ministers and deacons in Savannah, Georgia to discuss the future of former enslaved Africans. Elder statesman Garrison Fraser told Sherman, "We want land so we can provide and do for ourselves." As a result, Special Field Order Number 15 was signed, giving 400,000 acres of land to newly freed African families. land stretching from the coastline of Charleston, South Carolina to the St. Johns River in Florida, including the Georgia Sea Islands. Each family would receive 40 acres. This is where the concept of 40 acres in the mule comes from. Unfortunately, the white power structure did what they always do. They broke their promise. Today, Special Field Order Number 15 serves as a reminder of what America owes black people. And with the claim to the 5 states, the Republic of New Africa is fighting to force America to make good on her promises.
All of the crime, violence, and poverty that torment our community can be frustrating, especially if we buy into the narrative pushed by the mainstream media. But we know the solution. We've already done it. Whenever we have gained a level of independence, we have thrived. The key is independence. Having the ability to control our lives. Being able to create institutions that support our people instead of exploiting them. There are many people today who are working toward the solution, but we need your help. It's time to stop talking about the problem and start participating in the solution. Join the movement. For more information, visit us at pg-rna.com, or you can donate at $PGRNA. Together, we can build a nation and build a better world. Free the land.
Any means necessary. I'm Brother Zumbi New Afrique.
Obiemi New Afrique.
And we represent the Harriet Tubman District on the eastern shore of Maryland. We're here at Nation Day 55 here in Charleston, South Carolina.
Enjoying it. Here to represent the Harriet Tubman District on the eastern shore. And just want to commemorate and celebrate the 55th year of the PGRNA.
Right on. Time to break it down.
Hey, how y'all doing? I'm Atadra Jasiri from Columbus, Georgia. I'm with the People's Party for Independence. Our organization, we're standing on 5 principles of defense, education, economics, politics, and culture. And in doing that, we think if we can control these 5 principles, then we'll be able to keep the community safe, clean, and organized. And in keeping the community safe, clean, and organized, we know that we need to own, operate, and control the community. And in doing so, we think 5 institutions will help us, and that's a grocery store, a school, a hospital, a bank, and a community center. We've already purchased a community center. Next, we're going to implement a grocery store for our people. So we can all come together and unite to fight against all the ills inside of our communities. We'll be able to free the land, we'll be able to govern ourselves, and we'll be able to put ourselves in a position to where we can have some wiggle room. We might not always be free, but we'll be free enough to where we can breathe. So that's what we're looking to do, to have survival programs in place pending revolution. And we want to work with everybody around the world, work with everybody within the Republic, so that we can have some type of cohesion, some type of common unity to do what we need to do in order to put ourselves in a position to be what we need to be.
As young people, you have to develop a sense of courage, right? I like to say freedom ain't free.
Africa, Africa.
My name is Kwaku Adisi, and I'm one of the brothers on Johns Island here.
Okay.
And what I do a combination of things, but I participate in a lot of Afrocentric programs and to help wake our people up. A lot of people don't know. And trying to make us a better people and be the people that we're supposed to be. Understand that this is a tree that our ancestors, who was on Johns Island, the tree was a place that we buried our people, had ceremonies around this tree in order to honor our ancestors, to worship them. But a lot of people don't know it because through history things have been watered down and forgotten about.
We are now on what used to be plantation of Mr. Justice Angel, okay? And so he had this land in the 1700s. And so primarily, this tree was on his property even back then. This is the oldest known tree in this part of North America, east of the Mississippi River. It was here during the period, not just of enslavement, but during the days when the Edisto, the Yamasee, and the Wadmalaw, and various other Native American tribal groups walked this land. So they have the saying, you know, if these streets could talk, they could tell us wonders. The same is true of this tree, because this tree was here when Justice Angel owned this plantation, where, of course, many of our ancestors from the Johns Island area were once enslaved.
The people that are buried under this tree, because as it was saying, this was a marker of graves one time. On the plantation, they buried their trees so they can know where their people was buried. No ceremony for my people in this land. We remember them today because we need the positive energy of the ancestors be with us in our travel, as our journey. We need the power of the ancestors not to survive, but to live. We live, we don't survive, animals survive, we live. As African, we live. No matter where we are, we live because we have the DNA information of Africa in us, and whatever name was before they named it Africa, we are. Mama Africa.
I knew about it, but
yeah, your children in this strange land crying out. Mama, Mama Africa.
All of the crime, violence, and poverty that torment our community can be frustrating, especially if we buy into the narrative pushed by the mainstream media. But we know the solution. We've already done it. Whenever we have gained a level of independence, we have thrived. The key is independence. Having the ability to control our lives. Being able to create institutions that support our people instead of exploiting them. There are many people today who are working toward the solution, but we need your help. It's time to stop talking about the problem and start participating in the solution. Join the movement. For more information, visit us at pg-rna.com, or you can donate at $PGRNA.
Black August is an annual commemoration and prison-based holiday to remember Black political prisoners, Black freedom fighters, and Black resistance against racial, colonial, and imperialist oppression. It started in the prisons to commemorate the resistance of freedom fighters George and Jonathan Jackson, but soon spread beyond the walls. Today, it is observed all over the country and serves as a strong reminder to continue to fight oppression by any and all means necessary. This is Black August Resistance, heroes and sheroes of the RNA 11. In 1968, led by members of the Malcolm X Society, 500 new African Black activists met in Detroit, Michigan to discuss the direction of our struggle against oppression in America. At this meeting, the Provisional Government of the Republic of New Africa was formed.
It was a culmination of all types of organizations and movements and individuals. They all came together to participate in a 3-day conference in Detroit, Michigan. We were told that there were at least 500 delegates that came. And at the end of that 3-day conference, they ended up coming up with a Declaration of Independence that stated to the United States and to the world, and giving, of course, credence to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that we had the right to exist, and utilizing the spirit of self-determination. They were able to declare to the world that we were forming a government, we were getting ready to declare ourselves independent.
Over the years, the RNA and its citizen workers have been infiltrated and attacked on several occasions by the U.S. government. One of the most brutal attacks occurred on Wednesday, August 18th, 1971, in Jackson, Mississippi.
My name is Addis Ababa. I'm known for being one of the RNA 11. We were citizens of the Republic of New Africa, and we were attacked August 18th, 1971 in Jackson, Mississippi by the FBI, police, along with vigilantes that were with them as well.
According to Ababa, an undercover agent was sent to stay with the RNA by the counterintelligence program to justify the attack on the RNA.
Well, there was a guy who had robbed a gas station up in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Stagger Lee. I think I remember that's his name. And somehow he found his way to Jackson, Mississippi. Found his way to Jackson, Mississippi with the RNA. What we found out later on, that he was brought down to Jackson, Mississippi by COINTELPRO. They were planning him in the house so they could have a justification for raiding the house, looking for a murder. Before I got there, they had thrown him out the house because he was causing trouble in the community. You know, they say, oh, wait a minute, you calling to, no, They didn't know that he was wanted for murder. So they kicked him out the house. So the FBI felt that now, well, they knew he was gone because we had been infiltrated. But it was not only him, but it was other agents around. And so they felt it was time to raid the house right then and to attack us on August 18th, 1971. And we had our presidential, we had our embassy next to Jackson State University, where a couple of years before they had shot up Jackson State. Some of the same police attacked us, attacked Jackson State as well. But our president and our minister of information and our minister of defense and another gentleman were in that house, and there was 7 of us in the other house, which makes up 11, RNA 11.
The police claimed they were serving a warrant, yet no warrant was ever shown. According to witnesses, police attacked first with tear gas and gunfire, and the RNA defended themselves.
We were asleep when we heard, it was at the break of dawn, I heard 28 I heard the word jump. The word jump came about. The word jump came about after the Black Fred Hampton and Mark Clark were attacked in their sleep. Whenever you heard the word jump, that means, you know, grab your weapons, you're being attacked. They said they gave us a minute to come out, but I didn't hear. You know, I was woke up when I heard 28, 27, and I heard Kareem holler, jump. And I grabbed my weapon, and that they counted down, and we were just waking up, and before we could get our bearings together, they began to shoot in the house. There was no negotiation, nothing. They didn't say who they were looking for, that they were there looking for somebody named so-and-so and so-and-so. They just say, come out the house. And they began to shoot in the house and, you know, shoot. They opened fire on us. And we returned the fire. You know, I was in the kitchen, and once we engaged them, they shot through the window. Some type of missile through the window. It was red with a yellow cap to it, you know, with wings on the back. It's about this. Some people say it was a tear gas canister, but all I know, it came. Well, I shot out the window first. I shot out the window. I was engaging, and then and when I ducked down, because they all began to aim at me, shot the missile. It went into the refrigerator, went in the refrigerator. If that sucker would have hit me, I know I was dead, because it went in the refrigerator popped open. I was taking a lot of fire because it was a wooden house. I was taking a lot of fire, so I crawled into the kitchen. Crawled into the living room, and I could see the curtains in the living room. I was crawling in the dining room, but I could look in the living room and see the curtains up in the air, because they were shooting so many rounds, and we were on like kind of an incline, so a lot of bullets was popping off the walls. And, you know, plaster was, you know. They were firing because there was over 100 police and FBI out there, so they was laying down fire on us. And so I saw Kareem crawling around the corner into a bedroom, and when I followed them, and when we got to the bedroom, I looked into the closet, and they were going down in the closet. And because we're in Mississippi, and they don't have basements, right? They have like what they call rat traps. When I crawled down in there, everybody, the 7 were there. The 2 sisters were in a ditch, and being protected by one brother, and then it was the other 3 of us. We could see out the back, and they were shooting up at the house. So we laid down fire there, and I don't know, about for another 5 minutes, 10 minutes or so, they didn't know where the fire was coming from. They kept shooting up, and then they fell back and they quit firing, and then they got to hollering about, you know, Amari Obadelli, where are you? You know, Amari. And they were directing a lot of that fire into the room that they thought was Amari Obadelli's, the president's room. They directed a lot of fire into that room. And after, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes, something like that, we ran out of bullets, and we decided to surrender because we ran out of bullets. And we remembered little Bobby Hutton of the Black Panthers when him and Eldridge Cleaver was up under there, and little Bobby came out and they shot him, you know. So people were kind of reluctant to go out. We said, no, I'm not going out there. And so I just, you know, I was pretty geeked up, you know. I was like, I was just willing to die. I mean, but to die, you know. And so I crawled out. And next to us there was a fence. The police, the FBI had cut a hole in the fence, and they directed me to come over to the hole. You know, they had me under. So I went there, and after that, the other 5, they came out. We left our guns up under the porch, and we came out. Then they took us out front and began to, interrogate us, beat us, and from there they took us on to jail. And
the shootout resulted in the death of Jackson Police Lieutenant William Lewis Skinner, and injury of another patrolman and an FBI agent. No RNA member was harmed.
Some interesting things happened after we came out the house. They sat us on the corner, the 7 of us, and they took the ties and they handcuffed us. Then they began to, interrogate us and kick us in the back and things like that. And we were out there for about 15 minutes, and then a undercover police car pulled up, and the police got out and popped the back of the trunk, and they pulled out cases, 24 packs of Miller High Life, and they began to pass it around to the police. And this is after 2 police were wounded. Our FBI was wounded, the police was wounded, and another police was clearly, he eventually died. This after they think they were celebrating the battle. And then a sergeant came and said, what the fuck are you doing? We got our ass kicked. My friend is dead. And I got a kind of chuckle out of that during the tragedy, because my head laid down. I'm looking at Hikima, and I kind of laughed about that, And then they threw the beer back in the car, in the uncovered car, and they drove off. Then they came and they put us in the pack, and we saw Army personnel carrier there. They had a little old gun up on top. A 60 caliber machine gun was on top. They came to, to massacre us, man. And they threw us in the back of the paddy wagon, and they threw a tear gas canister back there, And the next morning, they marched us in chains, with feet in chains and hands in chains. The next morning, they marched us to the courthouse, and white folks was clapping, they were clapping. And then we began our trial. Kima and Ofaga went to trial. They tried to fight the case, and they was found guilty, and they got life. They all came back. And by that time, my lawyer was working. And I didn't know it then, but I found out years later that my lawyer was a friend of the prosecutors, and I didn't know that. They had went to school, so I pleaded guilty to shooting, because I was gonna get life. I was gonna get life. Yeah, they're gonna give me life too. I figured, well, why should I? And we all talked about it while we were locked up, and Hikima and Ofaga said, man, ain't no use you getting life. If you can make a deal and not get life. And I said, yeah, I shot. They wanted me to say that Omari Odeli told me to shoot. The president, I said, no, Omari didn't tell me to shoot. I shot because you people were shooting at me. I'm defending myself. Ain't nobody told me to do nothing. So they gave me a 12-year sentence. Then when we all went to federal court, they let us fight our federal court together. We all fought it together. And we all were found guilty for shooting at the federal officers, and we all got 12 years. And we were all out of prison in 10 years. I did 9 years. The three other brothers did 10 years.
It's one of the legacies to show. It literally shows how the U.S. government, COINTELPRO, CIA, FBI, National Guard, etc., actually attacked our right to self-determination.
The legacy of the RNA-11 is the same legacy of Black August. Resist oppression. Let's be clear. That night, the United States government tried to assassinate the leadership of the Republic of New Africa. They tried to do the same thing to us that they did to Fred Hampton and Mark Clark. But we learned from that. We studied it. We prepared. We trained. And because of that, we lost no life that night. We had to bury nobody, but they did.